What up, fam? I am Dr. De Luna, and you are listening to Drop It Like It's Doc podcast. Today is going to be our first episode on pediatrics, on little kiddles, because first of all, they're precious, but second of all, there's an epidemic of sick kids, and that is just not okay with me. It doesn't sit right with my soul, so I want to educate you on how to have a happy, healthy kiddo so that they evolve into a happy, healthy adult. So, honestly, some of these statistics are going to disturb you. They deeply disturb me. So for the first time in history, it is predicted that our children have a shorter lifespan than us. What? Our little babalinos have a shorter lifespan than their parents? That's fucked up. 1 out of 2 kids has a chronic health concern. 1 out of 5 has eczema, 1 out of 10 has asthma, and 1 out of 10 has ADHD. And those are just the diagnosed concerns, right? There is an epidemic of neurocognitive changes in our youth. And also, just because the brain is influencing every arm of our body, our immune system, our gut, truly, it spills over into every organ system in the body. We are seeing those changes start from the development years. And development actually starts to take place in the womb, but a lot of what I'll be speaking to happens once these little baby angels are earthside. But I guess it really does start with birth, huh? So first off, please know that I'm never judging you. I really am not. I know plenty of individuals that had a plan for what they thought that their birth was going to look like, but the universe had a very different plan in store, and that is beautiful, honestly. We have to go with the flow. Birth is something that we can't predict. We don't know what's gonna come up, and honestly, the most important thing in that situation is your life and your baby's life. So if that means that you had a procedure done to help baby get out safely, please know that I support you. There is no judgment there. However, studies have shown that C-section babies are lacking the microbial diversity that they need to develop optimally. And that's because when babies are born, actually in the 3rd trimester, which is wild, there is a thinning of the perineum between the anus and the vagina. So the vaginal microbiome shifts of the mother, and then baby comes out through the vagina in a vaginal birth, and it gets colonized with all of those bacteria. And those bacteria set up an ecosystem. There is an incredible amount of bacteria in the vagina and in the bowels, right? And that is truly coating a baby's insides to set up their immune system, the way that their body functions and sees the external environment, and that definitely sets up gut health. And if you had a C-section baby, or if you were a C-section baby, unfortunately that colonization didn't necessarily happen because the vaginal canal was not the route of exit, it was through the outside world. And oftentimes when these little babalinos get colonized with the bacteria that is in the hospital room, and if you've ever been in a hospital, I personally hate them, says the doctor. I knew right away when I became a doctor that there was no way in fuck that I was working in a hospital. Honestly, isn't that funny? But it's the truth. Anything that can kill you is in the hospital. Truly. All the weird microbes are in there. And plus, the hospital rooms are sterilized, so it's not a reflection of an internal microbiome, right? So that is what sweet little babalino is getting if they are C-section. So I did just want to throw that out there, that can definitely influence things. However, remember, I'm not here to just give you all this doom talk. Something that you can do if that's the case for this little babalino is that in hospitals, they're actually doing this now, is that you can swab your vagina, put it in little baby's mouth, little baby's nose, little baby's ears, and it will start to colonize everything, okay? So just want to throw that out there that is your right to do that. It's your baby, it's your vagina. You can literally even stick your finger up there and rub it around baby's mouth, nose, ears, and it will help that colonization process, right? So now baby's earthside. Babies are, first of all, you're kind of like a big plant. And I'm speaking to those of you that are holding the baby, birthing the baby, right? Like mamas. So you're like a big plant and your body almost concentrates everything into the womb. So babies right now in their cord blood, in the placenta, they have a sickening amount of toxins, honestly. So your preconception care, as you know, because we talk a lot about that on this podcast, it does change the health of your baby long-term, your child long-term, and does prevent things like chronic disease, diabetes, metabolic imbalance, autoimmune disease. All of that plays a role based on the environment, the soup that a little baby was swimming in. So did want to throw that out there, but regardless, now baby is born, and baby is born into this world in which We're kind of poisoned all the time. I know. I even hear myself and I'm like, shut up, but it's the truth. We're poisoned all the time. And babies, they're crawling on the ground. They're licking everything. They're putting everything in their mouth. You tell a baby don't eat that, like what's the baby gonna do? The baby's gonna eat it. You're at the beach, what's the baby gonna do? The baby's putting sand in its mouth. You're at the park, what's the baby gonna do? The baby's gonna dig into the soil. And like, that is okay. Let the baby do what the baby needs to do. It's exploring, it's connecting its brain to its hands, it's trying to develop its frontal lobe. But while that's happening, our environment, unfortunately, is not the cleanest, I would say. And I'm not talking about like microbes and compounds in the soil. I'm talking about pesticides. I'm talking about herbicides. I'm talking about things that are just sprayed around like it's no one's business. And then these sweet little babalinos are like playing around in the grass and their little thin skin absorbs it all. So babies are just exposed to a lot of toxins just from being a baby and crawling on the floor. And also, you know that I'm a huge fan of you not wearing shoes in the house. And that's because then you're introducing that into your home and your babies are on the floor. And if you just have fur babies like me, that's the same thing, right? Like they're still getting exposed to that same toxic load that is on the bottom of your shoes that is now on your floor. So we're taking the shoes off. Also, babies in general, we're not going to talk about vaccines in depth, but let me just say that when I was a baby, the vaccine schedule was quite different than it is now. The amount of things that are injected into these little humans within weeks of them being born doesn't make sense to me at all, because they can have interactions, they're stimulating the immune system, they can cause all sorts of things. I'm not saying vaccines are bad, okay? I'm just saying the way in which they are now applied to our youth doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Okay? And in these vaccines, there's not just the compound that you're trying to stimulate an immune response against. They do have other compounds in there that are highly inflammatory, things that are adjuvants that help to activate an inflammatory response, and those can trigger different types of things. There's heavy metals in some of these vaccines as well, but not to mention that these kids are getting this shit not only from vaccines. And again, I'm not telling you to not vaccinate. That is a conversation that you and your doctor have, but I will say that it can be a lot at once for a system that is just trying to feel safe in the world. That's what the immune system is doing. It's telling your body if it's safe or if it's not. And if the immune system does not feel safe because of something like a massive bolus of an immune stimulating soup, then things can show up like autoimmune disease, leaky gut, skin issues, eczema. How many babies I know that have eczema? And yeah, you can have eczema, right? Like anyone could get eczema, but eczema is a sign that there is significant inflammation in the gut. And inflammation in the gut is leaky gut, right? That means that the lining of your cells is starting to open up and these inflammatory compounds are getting into the blood that sits right below those cells, circulating everywhere. It's now breaking down your skin barrier and is coming out of your skin. Now you have eczema and it's itchy. And I will say that kids are fed poison. I know. Wow, I just had a flashback because maybe 2 years ago, I made a post on social media about what is in Similac. And let me just say that moms were fucking outraged and they were mad at me. Do I make Similac? Do I make baby formula? No, it's just my job to tell you that feeding your newborn hydrogenated oils is probably not a good idea. So sorry that I'm the first one that told you that, but it's actually not a good idea. So first of all, maybe ask yourself why babies are getting fed that. Like, I wouldn't even eat that. Why would I give it to a baby? That's not me saying to not give your baby food when it needs food if you can't breastfeed. There's plenty of ways to make sure that the nourishment of your child is adequate. However, no one should be consuming that, especially not a baby whose gut is just trying to develop, whose immune system is trying to develop, who needs an exquisite amount of nutrients to develop their brain. So outside of the formula that is straight up just an inflammatory milk substitute, there is a sickening amount of toxins in most baby foods, baby snacks. Did you know that Cheerios, Nature Valley, like fucking Quaker, they have some of the highest levels of glyphosate out, fam. Glyphosate is not good for you. No, it's not. No, it is not. It actually gives you things like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So, you know, if that is clear in the literature, it's literally clear that it causes cancer. That's just one of the many cancers that it can contribute to. Why would we allow it in our food? Why would we have it in such high levels in Cheerios? And I could just picture like my little, I can actually see the thing that used to hold cereal when I was a little baby that I would take with me, and it would open and it was filled with Cheerios. So also, let me say, fam, I was vaccinated. I ate all these foods. Everything that I'm saying, essentially I went through, right? And I consider myself pretty darn healthy, but also it's my job to educate you on why these things aren't such a great idea and how you can be empowered to make better choices. So there are so many health conscious snacks out there that aren't filled with glyphosate. And really, glyphosate is just one of the many. Let's talk about food dyes. Does your child have ADHD, or are they just reacting to the red dye? Those are all neurostimulating compounds. So if you're feeding a kid Skittles all day and then wondering why they're running around like a crazy person and can't sit down in class, and now you're giving them meth to try to calm them down, I ask you if you could consider switching up their food and not giving them something that is causing their brain to fire irregularly, because truly, I'm not making any of this stuff up. I wish I was. I really, really, really wish that I was making all this up, but I'm not. So I would not recommend anything with dyes in it to your kids. And a lot of these compounds that I'm even speaking to, they are truly illegal, fam. In most other countries, if you were to look on the back of the same package of the same product here versus somewhere in Europe, grossly different ingredients. And that's because a lot of different countries acknowledge the fact that these things are not helpful to any part of health, and then they just take them off the menu. But here, they're fed. Don't even get me started on school lunches. Like, what is the chicken that they're giving people? I remember these riblets. Ew, these riblets from my high school. Like, what the fuck were they? But what we're feeding our kids is unacceptable. I was probably the most picky eater in the world. My grandmother, the one tattooed on my arm, would truly pay me to eat good food. I'm not kidding. I'm Jewish, by the way. So she would just give me different shekels, different coins that I would put in my little coin purse if I would eat real food, because all I wanted to eat was fish sticks and pizza and American cheese. So again, I'm not judging you and your child. I'm just hoping that you can do better than me. So yeah, we need to feed our kids real food, and there's lots of ways that we can do that. You can sneak real food into smoothies. You can actually introduce these foods to them early on, but you can also just give them permission to try new things, because yeah, kids are picky. I was very picky, but also a kid doesn't know what it likes and doesn't like. You can make things fun. You could hide veggies in different sauces. You can make fruit smoothies and put different greens in them. You could do different nutritional powders. Lots of ways to sneak it in, but nutrition comes first, and our kids, unfortunately, are so malnourished, and they're exposed to so many toxins, not even to speak to things like heavy metals, which I didn't speak to, which is just abundant in food. I saw this thing on Instagram, which I don't know if it's real, but I'm gonna assume it's real because everything on Instagram is real. And it was this woman who had her daughter's cereal. I also think it was Cheerios. Like, Cheerios, what are you doing? Just question for you. But it was this magnet, and she was holding it outside the plastic bag, and she was pulling out metals from the fucking Cheerios. What? Doesn't make sense to me. So that's the food. Kids need real food to have neurodevelopment. They also need it to grow and to be happy. So you also need those things, fam. Mom and dad, you need to eat real food. Be a good example for your kiddo. You know, try new things with them. Try to have fun with them. Give them permission to take a couple bites and see how it sits. Also, let me say, I don't have children, so I'm well aware that you might be like, she doesn't even know what it's like sitting at dinner with Billy. I always use the name Billy, but I trust that you can do it. So going back to gut health, so much health begins in the gut, and we are talking about the microbiome, we are talking about nutrition, we are talking about leaky gut. All of that overflows into every other system of the body, because if your gut is inflamed, everything else is going to be inflamed. And I see a lot of really inflamed kids. Kids shouldn't have the level of inflammation that they do. I actually saw this disgusting study, again, that shows that children 0 to 17, yes, I'm aware 17 is not necessarily a child, but 0 to 17, they have the highest prevalence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease than they have throughout time of us being on this planet. That's because our kids are sick. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is when your liver gets so overwhelmed from a metabolic imbalance or toxic exposure that it then replaces those cells in your liver, healthy hepatocytes, with fat. And that is directly related to diet There's an incredible amount of diabetes in children. And I'm not just talking about type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune reaction in which autoimmune disease is drastically increasing in our youth, again, based on everything that we talked about so far, but also different types of things that can show up in the body are happening because the immune system is so confused. So your sweet kids deserve to have a happy gut, and they deserve to let that spill over into every other organ system that we are talking about. So your sweet little kids, they don't need to eat ice cream every night. I know. And again, fam, I was literally the chick as a little baby girl. I would go into the closet, my pantry, and I would eat spoonfuls of sugar. So I'm not judging your child. I was that child. I basically had type 2 diabetes growing up. Our kids should not have these metabolic imbalances. That's what's leading to things like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. All of that is related to diet and lifestyle. So if you could prevent some of this just by, shifting into healthy habits, which again, the whole family can do, you can't put a price on that, right? And metabolic health plays into cardiovascular health. It plays into the way that blood is flowing through your body, and your brain needs blood to it. And speaking of that, probably another reason why our kids are so sick is because they're obese. Why are they obese? Because the food is making them sick and obese. That's just given, right? Kids should not be sitting inside on screens. They should not. My future daughter, she will not have a phone until high school. Good luck to her. I will put a tracking device in her though, so I know where she is at all times. Just kidding. I'm going to be a crazy parent. Good luck. Good luck to us all. But, when I was little, you know what I would do when I got home from school? I would go play with my neighbors. I'd maybe ride my bike. I would jump on the trampoline. At night, we would play manhunt. You know what I wasn't doing? Sitting on my screen. I didn't even have a screen. I did not have one. I'm not that old, fam, but that is something that I really do want to stress, the influence of screens on neurodevelopment, but also just how it glues you to a couch. We shouldn't be sedentary as a human species. We were meant to move. That's actually how our brain developed. So I think that a big kind of reason why there's been this surgence in things like ADHD, anxiety, depression, autism, yes, it has to do with the development in the womb, those toxic exposures, hormone imbalances, genetics, blah, blah, blah. But a big reason has to do that the brain is not developing the way that it should. And that also, let me just say that the government agencies that decide what is appropriate for development just took crawling off the menu. What? Okay. Let me just pause and break that down for a second. Normal neurodevelopment requires crawling. That's because this cross-crawl motion actually fires up into the brain to activate it. And the fact that not enough kids are crawling so that just gets taken out of the standard, typical development is a travesty to me. And instead of taking it off of that typical, step-by-step process, instead maybe we should ask ourselves why our children are not crawling. Is horrifying to me. Your kid needs to crawl. If your pediatrician told you that it's okay that your kid skip crawling, it's honestly not. Get them on the ground, help them crawl. They can still go back and do it. But if your kid went from laying down like a little goober to standing up, they missed a step. They definitely missed a step. And your brain develops from the bottom up. So all these basic functions actually feed higher level functions. So it's really important that you could do things like sit up before you crawl and, have spinal stability before you stand and things like that. And that's where crawling is huge. So big fan of you actually following typical developmental patterns. And if not, working with someone that can help, because babies' brains are so malleable. They have something called neuroplasticity. All of our brains do, but babies' brains are firing at an incredible rate to make connections and to create function. So you can do these different exercises in your baby that will start to stimulate the different neuroconnective pathways that will then feed into the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is what makes you a good human. The frontal lobe is what makes you you. It's what makes you show up to life. It's what makes you do what you say you're gonna do. It gives you focus and concentration, and not having that would give you signs and symptoms of things like ADHD. So really, do we have an epidemic of ADHD, or do we have an epidemic in which kids are not moving their bodies so that they can't activate their frontal lobes that then spills over into every other process of development? So clearly you could tell that that's where I feel. I think that our kids just need to play more. They need to get outside more. They need to move their bodies more. Kids should not be obese. If your child is obese, there's something wrong. And if you are obese, so then you think your child is okay being obese and you say it's your genes. It's not, honey. It's your diet. It's your lifestyle. You have to change that. You have to be a good example for your kid, because studies are showing now that your kid's not even going to last as long as you. So that's fucking insane. So you could tell that I'm a big fan of kids being healthy, of all of us being healthy, right? But a healthy kid is what makes a healthy adult. So some things that you could do to just help all of this. First of all, please start eating real food. You and your kid, they have to eat real food. I'm aware that it's probably more challenging than I could ever possibly imagine raising a new human. I am aware of this, and I'm aware that, your kids have preferences. They want to feel like they're fitting in, but the standard of health is sickness in this country. The food that standard Americans are eating is not healthy. I would never eat it. And if I'm not going to eat it, I wouldn't even feed it to my dogs, let alone to a baby that I built with my body. So this is something that your whole family can do. Focus on whole foods, real foods. Learn how to make them taste good. You can make anything taste good. You can make broccoli taste delicious. You can make anything into something that someone would like, but they have to feel safe doing it. They have to feel like it's an option. And also they want to see you doing it, because if they don't see you doing it, they're not going to. Your kid also needs to move their body, okay? And it could be anything that they enjoy. It could be playing with friends outside, playing a sport. It could be dancing. Dancing's one of my favorite things of all time. You could dance with your kid at home. You could sign them up for soccer. I don't care what it is, but your kid should not be coming home from school and sitting on a screen at all. You need to be mindful about toxins. You need to be mindful about things like food coloring and just random things that you're dragging inside. And with that being said, there's a lot of things that you could do to detoxify these little kiddos in which they wouldn't even know that they're detoxifying, like jumping on a trampoline. Jumping on a trampoline is magical, just to activate your muscles, but it's also moving your blood and it's moving your lymph. And your lymph is where a lot of these toxins are held, so helping to clear them out of the system is incredible. Also, you could do things like Epsom salt baths. That's very detoxifying. Your kid's going in a bath anyway, so might as well put Epsom salt in there. You should definitely filter the bath water. Just saying, definitely filter that bath water, because your baby might react to something in that water. I would also recommend making sure that your kid has a lot of fiber. Fiber is in the form of whole fruits, whole veggies, legumes, like real food, not Quaker oats. And with that being said, it will help them poop, because when you poop, that's one of the main ways that your liver detoxifies. You can also help your little kiddos sweat. Guess how they can sweat? They can play. I know, it's mind-blowing. This is a hard one, right? I'm sarcastic. I'm aware I'm jaded, and I know that I'm sarcastic, and I know that I'm dramatic, but also I'm sarcastic and dramatic because our kids deserve better. Our kids are our future. Babies should not have fatty alcoholic disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. They should not have diabetes. They should not have autoimmune disease. That is a sign of the level of toxins in these little tots. That is a sign of the level of inflammation in these tots, not even to speak to the stress. Kids are under a lot of stress. They're under immense pressure to just be better. Let's just let our little kids be kids. Let's let them play outside in the woods. I'd much rather have my kid eat dirt than eat Cheerios. Let that sink in. I'm serious though. Truly, if you don't believe me, just look up the snacks that you're feeding your babe and look if there's food coloring, if there's hydrogenated oils in there, or seed oils, or weird additives, or pesticides like an insane amount of glyphosate. I can almost promise you that there is. There's things like Thrive Market as well, which is an online pantry, essentially, for everything healthy. So your kids don't know what you're buying. Buy them fruit snacks from a health conscious place. It's gonna taste the same to them, right? It's okay. And also, with all this being said, kids are resilient. Kids' bodies are meant to detox. Your body is meant to detox, but it would be silly for me to give you tools to help a kid detox without talking about the ways in which they're getting toxic, right? So as mom and dad, unfortunately, a lot of this responsibility falls on you to be a good example, but also to advocate for your kids and to remind them that sometimes being healthy means that you do things a little bit different because we're living in a sick world. But I truly believe that our kids are going to change this planet. They are, because this is not sustainable the way that things are going on. It's not. So when we start to teach our kids from a young age a different way of doing things, they're just going to carry that baton and make this planet way better than it is now, because she's not doing great. She's not. So, I hope that you throw out all the food coloring in your house. No, your child does not need a blue cake. You can probably dye it with like blueberries or something cool. Honestly, I can almost promise you that for everything that you think that you need, some hippie crunchy mom has already created something for you to replace it. I promise you. I'm not that hippie crunchy mom. I will be one day. I'm not that now. But please, just look online. Ask your crunchy mommies. They got you. Moms make the world turn. And to all you parents on here, I admire you for staying sane while raising the next generation. So I hope that this episode inspired you to, maybe change some things around the house. And I hope that it also opens your eyes to that our kids deserve better, okay? And that starts with us. So thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me be my very honest self all the time. And I love you. So I'm here for you. See you soon.